you have some travel news, tell Cornwall. Call 01872 222222.
BBC Radio Cornwall.
OK, look, let's change the topics. We can go back to anything we've spoken about earlier, right through until 3 o'clock this afternoon. But this next story probably is going to shock some of you, because did you know that research into dementia and its treatments gets far, far less funding than cancer, heart disease and AIDS research? But it affects so many people here in Cornwall. In fact, 12 times more funding goes into cancer research, and yet it's estimated that by 2028, 30%, so that's a third pretty well, of Cornwall's population, will be over 65 years of age, and the amount of people with dementia will increase by 62% over the same period. So you can see why this is such a huge story. Well, the Cornwall-based specialist dementia not-for-profit organisation Memory Matters Southwest is backing the Alzheimer's Research UK campaign to increase funding. Well, let's find out more. In the studio is Laura Michael. Now, Laura's a registered mental health nurse with Memory Matters. Thank you so much indeed for coming in. So why doesn't then dementia get the funding it needs?
I think that's a really interesting question, and we feel that perhaps that's because it's something that affects older adults, whereas cancer affects everybody. So what we're finding is that people maybe can brush it under the carpet. It's quite easy to brush under the carpet. People in their 30s perhaps who think, maybe I don't want to think about this right now. But it's going to be a really big problem. So it's something that we really need to be looking at now.
And I said, obviously, we've gone through some of those figures. I mean, Cornwall is an ageing population, so I'm guessing the assumption is, I mean, you can get dementia at quite an early age as well. It's not necessarily to say it's just going to be old people.
Yeah, you can have early onset dementia, which can happen in your 40s. So there are people sort of as young as 40, 42 with dementia as well. But predominantly, it's people over 65. So...
Let's talk about this research then. It's what sort of research is it?
Well, it's all sorts of research, really. I mean, there just isn't enough funding in research at the moment, and that's the facts. So, I mean, looking into sort of genetics, they've managed to find now that there's one gene linked to Alzheimer's disease, but we need to know more about that. We need to know what that means. And also whether we can look at now we can look at things like testing genes, so we can look at the relationship between Alzheimer's and all the genes. So that's a bit of research that needs to be done. There's lots that needs to be done, but not just in sort of genetic research, but also in psychosocial therapies as well. Some of the therapies that we do, which is cognitive stimulation therapy, is evidence-based. To get an evidence base, we have to have the research. So there are some great therapies out there that have been researched, and that's predominantly where we work.
So if there was more, I suppose that the bottom line is you have to have more cash to achieve more research.
Yeah, I mean, this is the Alzheimer's Research UK. This is their campaign, really. And what they're saying is that they need more money to do the research that they need to do. So it's not us necessarily who need the money. Yeah.
No. And the therapies, I mean, talk to me about, I mean, your specific role is what then? Do you actually work with dementia patients? And talk to me about some of the therapies that you actually are involved with the patients.
Okay, well, so the main therapy that we offer is cognitive stimulation therapy.
Which is what?
Well, this is an evidence-based therapy, which is a very social therapy. It's a group therapy for up to about 8 people, and it's very structured, and it uses things like song, which we know again from evidence that the song centre is in a different part of the brain to the speech centre. So it's very important we stimulate all areas of the brain. So, for example, using song causes a lot of the brain to be stimulated. So it uses song, it uses something called reality orientation. This is something that was very popular in the 60s and 70s, but it was used all of the time, and it wasn't necessarily used in a way that was often very nice. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but...
Give me an example.
Well, for example, in the old sort of psychiatric hospitals, nurses would be expected to orientate people all the time. So when they were giving out the drugs, for example, example, they would be saying, you know, today is the 14th of February, etc., etc. But if somebody has dementia and perhaps they are in a different place and maybe believe that their parents are still alive and looking for mum, it's not necessarily very nice to tell that person that, you know, mum's dead and you're 89. What we try and do is use reality orientation in a different way. So this is it is an evidence-based therapy. So we would be really subtle. So, for example, if you just had lunch, you might say, oh, you know, I'm really full now because I've just had my lunch. And that would orientate somebody into knowing that it's after lunchtime rather than being really specific about it.
So, I mean, from what, if anyone's listening now who may want more information, can I get a phone number from you that we can perhaps give out on air and they can perhaps give you or one of your colleagues a ring? Yeah. I mean, this is all about funding. So how do you convince the authorities out there that, you know, more funding should be coming towards your sort of organisations and to help people with dementia? So I'm just wondering why so much money goes towards cancer and those other sort of charities.
I mean, I think it's really difficult, isn't it? Because when we're comparing cancer with dementia, we're not saying, you know, take funding out of cancer and put it in dementia at all. What we're trying to say is let's learn from the money that's been put into cancer and the great research that's been done. There's some wonderful therapies or great therapies, effective therapies that have come out of that, and that's what we need for dementia. Dementia is going to touch as many people as cancer touches people now. Right. But I think we need to be really careful about not making people fearful as well. I think lots of research, lots of campaigns look at fear, you know, like the AIDS campaign. You mentioned AIDS earlier in the 80s was about really putting the fear of God into people.
But I suppose people listening are worried about it, aren't they? We are all getting older. I'm getting older. You're getting older. You know, and we're all, and we have relatives who may have early onset of dementia, and it's a condition. I'll call it a condition, not an illness, but it's a condition which people really worry about. They're fearful of it, and you know, they're thinking, I don't want to live like this.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It is something that people are very afraid about, but people don't tend to see that you can live well with dementia, and that's what the part of the National Dementia Strategy is about. It's about helping people to live well with dementia, and that's what our work's about as well. And I think rather than putting fear into people, it's about showing them an understanding. So if you understand something, it becomes less frightening. So that's very much a lot about what our work is about, really, and that's about raising awareness and talking about it. We need to be talking about it a lot and looking at people with dementia very positively as well.
Well, a delight meeting you. Thank you so much indeed. If anyone listening wants more information about the role that you do and how they may be able to help your cause, is there a website or a phone number we can give out?
There's the website, which is www.memorymatterssw.co.uk. And the phone number is 01208 871 683. You might need to leave a message, but we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
Sure. My shorthand's is a bit rusty. www.memorymatterssw. Matterssw Southwest, yep.
.co.uk.
I'll put that on our Facebook page as well.
Lovely.
Listen, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
There you are, Laura Michael joining us live in the studio. www.memorymatterssouthwest or sw.co.uk. There is a phone number. Please, if no one's there, leave a message. 01208 871 683. Keep the calls coming in.
Laurence Reed.